Today we're talking about comparison, pros, cons, the spectrum. What can you do to eliminate it to the best of your ability to avoid the negative, the downside, and then how do you leverage it?
Sure. Yeah.
Which because you have to, like, you can't be competitive without comparing. So that's that.
Agreed. No, that sounds great.
Hey, welcome to the Academy 99 podcast. I'm Bradley Grinnan. This is Chris Lee.
How's it going, man?
It's going, man. I did not get the sleep that I require last night, and it wasn't due to lack of preparation or effort.
Right.
But if I don't, have we talked sleep patterns much? Just like this is my personal sleep pattern.
I think we've touched on it. It's something that I dig into with my clients all the time, though. Sleep is such a game changer if you can do it right.
Yeah. There's no nootropic that does as well as 8 hours of sleep. Like if I get 8 hours of sleep without any kind of supplement to sleep.
Medicinal help.
Okay. Yeah. If it's 8 hours of natural sleep, there isn't anything I can't do all day. There is, but I mean, like with my brain, there isn't anything I can't do all day long, right? If I get 6 hours of sleep, I think that's the normal person's 8. I still feel pretty good.
Yeah.
If I get 5 hours of sleep, I can't get out of the haze without a nap later in the day. I don't know if that's just my rhythm or what that is. And I'm not, I do not have the qualifications to say what that is.
I'm kind of the same way, man. If like 5 hours, I can do bare minimum, and get through stuff. Hopefully with not a lot of brain involvement. Like I can do menial tasks, I guess.
I know I skipped 7 hours of sleep, but that's just like, I just skipped it because it's like 20% better than 6 hours of sleep. It's like, that's going to be a really good day.
Right.
If I get 5, it's shot. Like if I get 4, I'm good for 6 hours of brain activity at a higher level. And then I need a nap, and then I'm probably good for like another 6 hours of that might be an exaggeration, 4 to 6 hours of high level brain activity. Anything under 4, I'm screwed. You know, just if I get under 4 hours sleep, then I'm not going to do well at all.
Agreed. If I anticipate that I'm going to get less than 4, I just stay up and I do like an all-nighter because I found that I get almost a second wind as the sun comes up, and then I can power through a bunch of stuff and I feel great. But then I crash in the afternoon, you know.
Yeah, I get that. 6:48. Okay, sweet. And I'll edit this out. Cool. Let me blow my nose one time without it being caught on camera. So then we just came out of the sleep talk. Okay, anyways, enough about last night's sleeping patterns for me. Well, how did you sleep? We shouldn't talk about how my night went without talking about yours.
It's all about you, man. It's all about you. No, I track my sleep with the Aura ring, and it says I got 8 hours, so my readiness score is now pretty high, and
that's great.
Resting heart rate was pretty low, so I was pretty pleased with that.
I'd use my Apple Watch. It's a newer version, and it actually does pretty well. I'm actually impressed with how well it tracks my sleep. 2 nights ago, 8 hours and 1 minute, and I was in the 99th percentile. All of my rings closed. I don't know if you have rings on Aura Ring, but all of my sleep rings closed, from oxygen to heart rate to deep sleep. It was brilliant.
You feel good when that happens, don't you?
There is no nootropic that can beat 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
So before we totally get started, please like and subscribe. That's my invitation to you if you are listening to this, if you're catching it, and share it with somebody that you think might be able to benefit from our conversation around comparison today. When I was in high school, I never unleashed, I rarely unleashed my full strength and the fullness of who I am. Lots of insecurities being the reason why. Like, I remember it wasn't until my junior year of wrestling that I had a winning record. And it wasn't until my senior year that I started beating people that I didn't think I had any business whipping on the mat.
Right.
And that was due to my coach. My coach came in, total outside factor, wrestled for Dan Gable, 3-time national champion,
Nice.
All-American every year. He was at Iowa, and he was like this outside force that just was like, he just knew how to unlock something in me. And he taught me, like, I grew up with Western Pennsylvania wrestling is full of the goofiest tricks to wrestling. Because it's like, this wasn't me because my dad wasn't this way. But when my two cousins were like 5 or 6 years old, shout out Scott Grinnan and Jim Grinnan, their dad just took them out on the mat at the YMCA at 6 years old and threw them on, and that's where they lived until they graduated high school. And Northwestern Pennsylvania is loaded with that sort of like what football is to South Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that that means anything to you, but so I didn't know, but he just unlocked something in me. But the thing that held me back in every area was comparing myself to the people around me and pegging exactly where I belonged in my head, and
Sure.
not even attempting to challenge to operate outside of that.
Right.
And what I would say is the comparison really was like the gateway to enhancing, and I don't mean this in a good way, my insecurities and my limiting beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The comparison can be incredibly detrimental to one's performance in any area of life, because kind of like you said, when you compare, I think when you're comparing yourself to other people, it does kind of put you in that box of like, all right, this is where I belong on this hierarchy of whatever, and I'm just going to be right here and comfortable with that, because it doesn't, comparison and that competition that stems from that, it doesn't force you to try to be better.
Yeah.
I heard a while back, and I can't remember who said it, but maybe it was Simon Sinek. But he says there is a difference between competition and rivalry.
Yeah, you mentioned that before on this.
Yeah, and I think the comparison leads to that competition where you're trying to butt heads, or you're limited in your ability because you fit into this weird hierarchy of ability or whatever. But the rivalry is where you make your money, because it's more friendly, because your rival is actually forcing you to be better because you want to be better than them, because it's a rivalry. You know what I mean? Maybe a minor distinction, but it's a game changer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, to me, that's a mindset.
Yeah.
That doesn't require two people to have.
Mm-hmm.
You can view me as competition, and I can choose to view you as a rival and just treat you as a rival.
Right.
So I can be friendly and get that catapult of sorts.
Sure.
mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally, even physically. And while you could view it as competition, when you get two people that view each other as rivals, that can be a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
you'll see that publicly. The biggest place I see it is that I can point to is for individuals is boxing.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of like Muhammad Ali and Frazier, so those that's like to me the big difference. They started out competing and
Right.
ended up as rivals,
Right.
right?
Right.
For that kid in high school and then through college, I always just kind of pegged where I thought I belonged by comparison. And it
Right.
wasn't until I was like 35, which is really late in the game, but I don't actually mean that. I don't actually mean it's late in the game, but it kind of sounds late in the game to start developing yourself.
Right.
I really didn't go full into that until I was like 35.
Yeah.
And I read a book on leadership.
Mm.
And so I started kind of unpacking this comparison thing. And so in terms of the negative aspect of comparison, everyone always says comparison's the thief of joy. I mean, I'd love to hear your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that. I believe that's true. I don't want to have a hot take on it.
Sure.
But the why to me is at least my understanding and insights that I've never heard anyone else talk about it, but it just makes sense to me,
Yeah.
is the level of judgment. There's 3 levels of judgment that are going on, and all of them are negative. And the first one is I am wholeheartedly judging the person I'm comparing myself to. And the reason why that is so harmful is because you never know what's going on in someone's life.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You usually don't know their advantages they've had. You can make them up in your head, and your brain for sure will make up, oh yeah, if I had an upbringing like that person, if I had their resources, if I had their drive, oh, if I had their metabolism, whatever it is.
Sure.
But you're absolutely just on surface wholehearted judging somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the problem with that is you're usually wrong.
Right. Exactly.
You're just usually wrong, right? So I'm wholeheartedly judging this person.
Right.
And then I'm looking back at myself and wholeheartedly judging myself. Usually as less than, but if I'm doing it as more than, it doesn't matter because now I've just absolutely pegged somebody and zero connotation for that, right? But I've absolutely just put somebody in a hierarchy, just absolutely judge them, and now I'm turning back and I'm judging myself, and it's negative if both ways. If I'm judging myself harshly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm missing all of the things that I'm unaware of about why I'm where I'm at.
Sure.
So you take business, for example. Which I did when I first started, judging against my mentors who were, making 400K a month.
Right.
That's revenue, not profit, but still. And then I was making like 7K a month. It was so easy to look past all of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that should have been obvious. Okay.
Right.
The real obvious ones are like, I've only been at this for 2 years. So how could I be where they're at? There's 2 of them in their company. There was only 1 of me in my company. They were significantly unfulfilled and unhappy people.
Right. Yeah.
In large part due to their drive
Mm-hmm.
to succeed financially. And I just missed all that stuff, and I immediately was very critical of myself all the time. Why can't I do it? They're younger than me. Why are they doing it? Why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Right.
And that self-judgment sucks, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm turning around one more time and making this judgment about the world, that the world should be a specific way, particularly me in it, in order for me to get better or get as good as.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think it's real dangerous to set your goals. I want to be as good as or better than another individual.
Right.
And I know that sounds like, man, I'm talking out both sides of my mouth when we get to competition or rivalry, but that's 3 layers of judgment that
I think
you just absolutely.
you're pretty spot on, dude. I think the judgment that comes from comparison, I think you nailed it on the head. The judgment of others immediately puts you in a certain mindset of
right.
Well, almost like, well, they cheated to get there if they had certain advantages in life.
You would never say that out loud, but I mean, that's a solid point, dude. That's the emotional bedding that you're lying down in all the time. That's
exactly.
your nest and your fortress.
Exactly. 100%. And in reality, it's like, man, life is what it is. Some people will have advantages, some people don't. It's just like, it's not cheating. It's just life. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
Get over.
Well,
it.
Yeah. It's to get back to the in the lens of judgment. It's really, they don't deserve what they have. Is the ultimate judgment. Even though, again, you would never. Sometimes you might say it out loud. I probably never would.
Mm-hmm.
But deep in the subconscious, that's the posture.
Right.
They don't deserve that. And then the other posture is, I do deserve that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's a level of frustration you just can't analyze your way through.
Right.
Because the whole premise is warped.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's a good observation, Chris. Dude, you always do the gold standard observations. No, that's really good. I'm right. I wrote that down.
I think, kind of to your second point, the judgment then of self is that, like you said, that because they quote unquote cheated to get to where they were, I deserve at least that much because I didn't cheat, despite the fact that you may have had certain advantages that others haven't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so you're always like the protagonist in your own story, right? And which means like everybody else has to be the antagonist, and we talk a lot
or
about
an ally, but when you're comparing,
but if you're comparing,
even if you're comparing to your allies,
right? They become antagonists.
Yeah, man.
So, and I get it because we talk a lot about story and how that develops in our life and stuff, and we all want to be the hero of our own story, and that's great. But understand that everyone else is the main character of their story, and so they have a similar perception, of what's
that's
going on.
A perspective,
yeah. And what has helped me kind of alleviate, because I've definitely been in those seats of judgment of like, that douchebag, he doesn't deserve to be where he is.
Yeah.
Or maybe even not so harsh.
Before you get into what's helped you, can we continue down the rabbit trail of negative effects of comparison?
100%.
The thing that blows my mind about comparison is it's almost like there's very few things that'll stop you in your tracks.
Right.
As far as momentum goes, like comparison. Because even if you feel like from the the gambit of, oh, they don't deserve it, they cheated, I
Mhm.
do deserve it, to if it's an ally, and so you're less likely to feel like they don't deserve it, but it'll be softer. It'll be like, it'll manifest itself more in like, I wish I was as smart as him. I wish I
Yeah.
was as athletic as her, whatever it is.
Right.
I wish I had their acumen with people or with business or whatever.
Sure.
It's still going to, you still end up at a place of, I'm not doing as well as I should, not, I'm not doing as well as I would like to.
Right.
Almost every time.
Yeah.
You
No,
skip
that's
right
accurate.
past to, I wish I was doing better,
Yeah.
or what can I do to get better, to I should be doing better. Like,
Yeah. Right.
to usually you run into the brick wall. Like, it's, I think of like an old mining cart, out of control going down a mine, and then boom, you hit a stone wall.
Yeah.
And that stone wall is, I just don't have what it takes. That's
Right.
probably why I'm not where they're at.
Right.
Which is like that thin line you can barely see between that and I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
enough. I can't
Mhm.
do it. I'm going to keep trying because I don't want to look like an idiot, but this is never going to
Right.
work for me, whatever this is.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And I've known people, and I've done it in my own life. Is my buddy Travis and I used to refer to it as nesting. Whereas if you anticipate a difficult road ahead, um, in order to avoid some of that
Yeah.
shame from not making it, you're like, oh well, yeah, my knee was hurting that before ruck would start or whatever. Like, man, yeah, my knee's been bothering me lately. We'll see how my time is this time. It's nesting. It's setting you. It's laying the foundation of excuses as to why you didn't perform as
Yeah.
well as you expected. Um,
Yeah.
and when you get into that habit,
It's
you start building.
insidious.
It sneaks up on you, and then now your whole life is nesting, of laying down all the excuses as why you're not going to make it. And then what that does is it alleviates you from this sense of urgency to make it. And so when you don't, you can half-ass it, and then when you fail, you're like, oh well, the thing that I mentioned earlier, it came to be, or whatever the case is. Yeah.
Dude, it's so insidious that even I remember Mike Cassie was my coach's name, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That came in, and that is not to disparage the coach I had before him, but Mike Cassie came in and he would say with a conviction, all I ask is that you do your best.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't conditioned by him, I mean, a great coach is this outside perspective and force that moves you completely out of your comfort zone. And it's really unsettling because like you're inside, you're reeling because you're so used to operating with a specific operating system here and emotionally and in your
Yeah.
body. And now
Right.
he's just smashed that operating system and we're running a new one now. So it took me a
Right.
little while, but this is how insidious it is. All I ask is your best. And so my next question was, from that point on, for the first half of that season, was does he think that was my best?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the wrong person to be asking.
Right.
I'm the
Right.
only one who can answer that. But the reality is, and we'll get to it, but to me, that's one of the simplest ways out. Am I
Yeah.
doing my best? And if you aren't, there's still no comparison. You're not allowed to compare if you aren't doing your best. You
Mm-hmm.
can compare when you are doing your best because it's like Teflon. And you're just
Yeah.
like, he's better than me. She's better than me
Right.
at
Right.
this very specific thing. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
because I gave my best. So at least at this moment in time, you tip
Yeah.
your hat, and that's
Yeah.
rivalry for sure.
Agreed. Yeah. It's like, yep, he got me that time. I'll get him next time.
Yeah, nesting. I love the term.
Yeah.
So what is what is your quickest way out of judgment and comparison?
When I see people around me succeeding, I still have this like moment where I'm like, maybe it's jealousy. Yeah, jealousy or judgment.
Sure.
As soon as I recognize that, I switch to like, man, I'm stoked for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy that they were successful. And it becomes like this kind of period of gratitude, you know, grateful for somebody else's successes can become a game changer because um, it alleviates you from like that judgment cycle of judging them, then judging self,
Yeah.
it's more just like, man, I'm just happy that they were successful. And at some point I can be that successful too,
It's one of the traits from our first episode when we talked about, the power of proximity with
Yeah.
being around excellent people
Mm-hmm.
is, your people when they're happy for you when you succeed, and your people when you're really happy for them when they succeed.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, for sure. Jealousy is the word, I think. Envy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just the opposite side of self-pity, honestly, in my opinion. Jealousy and envy is the other side of poor me. And as you would say, poo-poo face. But I would, because when you can get into that place where you genuinely are happy for them. And by the way, I try to do this for people that I don't get along with too. Not for their sake, but for my own. I try to be happy for my enemies. Genuinely, like, good for them.
Yeah.
They're living their best life. And usually it's like, it's their world. We're just living on it. But
right.
When you can be happy for other people in your inner circle, it really allows you, with the right posture, to have a conversation around what is your difference. And oftentimes the best conversation, or the most productive conversation for you personally, after you've expressed how happy you are for this person, is you're not going to do what they did, which is, I used to think it's like, I need to do what they did.
Right.
And to some effect it is that, but it's not exactly, just follow these steps, which is like the biggest marketing BS lie ever told. 3 quick steps to influence people, whatever. Usually it's harnessing your own superpower, the things that you're really good at, and how do you leverage those? Because for them to succeed, they probably leveraged their superpower. And if you've got a really good inner circle person that you're sharing in gratitude for their success, they know well enough, at least my people do, to walk through a conversation of questions that help you kind of tap into, where can I gain advantage that I can gain? Because there are advantages that you have in the game of life I'm never going to have, because I either don't have those skill sets, and there's not enough time on this planet in my life to get my skill set to your skill set level. So it becomes about, okay, what are my skill sets and how do I use those? And, there are questions to walk through that to find out what that is. How do I uncover those and unleash those so that I have my level of success?
Right. A couple things I want to touch on. One is going back to the gratitude and the genuinely being happy for people when they succeed, even if they're enemies. I've found that the more you do that, the fewer enemies that you perceive.
Yeah.
Which can be a game changer too, because then you can create more allies. Second, you're right. I think everybody has different superpowers that they should leverage. And the development of those, or rather the discovery of those, takes like serious self-reflection. You and I are both in the coaching space. You are significantly better at certain things than I am. I would argue like navigating like mindset stuff and heart metaphorical heart things to get through, and discovering like real purpose and stuff. You're phenomenal at that, because that's your superpower, or at least one of them.
Right. And thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really good at like figuring out how to break things down and backwards plan, and also like asking. I'm good at asking the right questions at the right time, and so that's part of my superpower set. And
you're also better at kicking ass.
So like you and I
like
are
people
different.
People will take an ass kicking from you. You know what I mean? They'll be like, "Give it to me, Chris. Just kick my ass. I need to hear
it." Yeah, and that's because I spent 10 years getting my ass kicked.
I get it. So, like, I totally get it.
I speak the language,
Yeah, and I don't even want to kick someone's ass or have my ass kicked.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's just I spent a decade developing that skill set that you didn't really have the opportunity to do.
But
and so yes, we have different power sets. There are things that are in common that we can learn from each other. Like success leaves clues, right? And so we can learn from each other, help each other in that way. But then it's totally okay to diverge and dig into like, all right, so this is what just popped into my head. Remember that movie Cool Runnings, the Jamaican bobsled team?
R.I.P. John Candy.
Yeah. So yeah, it was such a great movie. But like when the team first showed up and started, training on the actual track in wherever the Olympics were being held that year, the team captain was watching. I think it was the Swiss. He was watching them perform, and he was like, "I want to be just like them." And so he copied everything they did, to include like their timing before they got into the sled. And that's not the right way to do it. They weren't Swiss or from wherever country the opposing team was. They were from Jamaica, and so they needed to do it the Jamaican way. And that's when they started to actually jive well as a team and really become successful within their own right. And yes, it was the same sport, but they had to do it two different ways because each of them had their own superpower. You know what I mean? Just copying somebody else, it really just turns you into a caricature of someone else.
The greatest example of this that I can think of immediately is UFC, because it has so many different styles of fighters with different fighting styles that you can literally on the mat see two people with two different skill sets, but utilizing them to their greatest advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes, so who can utilize their strengths the best?
Right. Exactly.
Which makes for great entertainment.
Yeah.
It just does.
It's awesome. It's awesome to watch.
Yeah. That's critical. So I love that. So being grateful for someone you do like, for someone I don't like. So I guess the second way through comparison is just recognition. So I'm going to get, speaking of, the heart and the mindset, it's just recognition of, oh, I'm doing this. I don't want to judge. Why don't I want to judge? It's not like, I don't look at judging as like, oh, you're being a bad person because you're judging. The reason why judgment is judging other people and judging yourself can be so self-harming is because we always overestimate what we know, what we think we know.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't, a few episodes back, I think I spun out the whole, like, what we actually know in the universe is closer to 0 than it is to 1 out of
Right.
a million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If the
Right.
scale's 1 to a million, we're closer to 0 than we are to 1. And so you just can't know. So it's a worthless. I'm not saying having good judgment. I'm saying making just a blanket judgment of someone or circumstance. So just having that awareness, okay, I just don't want to judge, because that is, if I make a blanket judgment, that's a real weakness in my tactic and in my game of what I'm at. And so sometimes just realizing can be enough to stop it from happening, and then shift into a place of, who am I? What am I worth? What do I believe? What am I capable of? What am I capable of that I didn't even know I was capable of? And that's where I love the power of vision and imagination, and grounding that into, so I feel it in my body, you know? So oftentimes an exercise I'll do with people is name, you can either make it up if you don't want to get personal, or if you want to get personal, get personal. Name something you just wish you were better at, but you feel like a real ceiling on.
Yeah. I mean,
and you could make it up out of it. Okay.
Yeah. Personally, it's like jujitsu. I remember my first week in jujitsu. I'm a former Green Beret. I'm relatively in shape. I walk in there and some 16-year-old string bean is folding me like a pretzel, and it's like, talk about an ego check, you know?
Yeah.
And then in addition, kind of going back to comparison, I would then roll as like a brand new white belt. I would roll with like the purple and the brown belts. And they would, again, just demolish me, and I would get super frustrated. I'm like, why aren't I as good as them?
Right.
It's like, because they've been training for 10 years.
Perfect. So if you start, so let's just go back in time, pretend we're back in time to when you first started. You came to me like, Brad, I suck at jujitsu, and I can't see myself. And so if I said, Chris, vision yourself just mopping them up, and what that feels like. And you might say, I can't, because it's just such an impossibility for me to even think about it right now. Because the reality is, Brad, I'm not, so I can't mop them up in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so my invitation would just be like, imagine what it would be like then if you could. I'm not asking you to envision that you are. Just imagine what it would be like if you could mop them up. And pretty quickly, people can get that feeling in their body. And when you've got that feeling in your body, you've completely short-circuited the analytical judgment that's going on in your head and the comparison.
Right.
It's just completely gone until you get back on the mat, which is, mindset is like hygiene. Like, you're going to have to use it every day, sometimes multiple times a day, if you're working out and then going to go on a date afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah.
I think that's spot on, dude.
Thanks for the example, man.
Yeah, man.
Any final words, man? What are your final thoughts?
You mentioned earlier, comparison is the thief of joy, and I think that's an accurate statement. Comparing where you are to where somebody else isn't, I don't think, is the right path to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Your journey is going to be different than somebody else's. Your desired end state might be different, so comparison, it leads right into that judgment that we've talked about. And that's where nesting starts coming in, to prevent the pain from, potential failure, so it becomes kind of like this trickle down effect, that doesn't set you up for success. So in my opinion, the only person you should be comparing yourself to is who you were yesterday. And I know that's kind of cliche and silly, but there's definite truth to that, like,
cliche because it's true.
Exactly. And so are you better than you were yesterday? And if the answer is no, then adjust fire and move on. If the answer is yes, then stay that path and keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah, everything you just said, I would sum up in comparison makes everything so much more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can still succeed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can have fulfillment.
Right.
And it's way more, it just makes things way more difficult. You know, it's like, do you want to do this hike with an elephant on your back or not?
Right.
You know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right on. Tell me about Academy 99.
Academy 99, it's you and I coaching twice a month, whoever wants to join. And it's great because you get high level coaching with some with with a group of people of like minded folks that are wanting to succeed, and for less than a fancy cup of coffee at Starbucks
Oh,
for a
you went
month.
with fancy. You didn't embrace my food. You haven't embraced my foo-foo Starbucks drink analogy. Sweet, man. Love it. Cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for
Appreciate
hanging
it.
out.
I got to go back and look over my notes.
Cool.
Because you said cool stuff, and I like to write it down.
So did you.
What's that?
I said, so do you, man.
Oh,
Keep
thanks.
crushing it.
I'll see you later, bro.
Sounds good. Later.